All right, man, peace. So, brothers, there's a phrase that very shrewd investors in the stock market world use known as irrational exuberance, which basically is based on the premise of having your finger on the pulse of the global consciousness, because we're operating within a global economy, a global market. So you have to know what's going to be popular and jump on board early so that you look as if you're sincere in your allegiances. Mr. Michael Jordan is a very shrewd investor and a very shrewd businessman. And I'm not saying that he's not concerned about so-called black people, or that the sentiments that he put forth in the aftermath of George Floyd's ritualistic removal were not sincere or heartfelt or what have you. But he's also a highly skilled businessman and marketer. And he read the tide, he read the tea leaves, and he knew that he had to get in on at least appearing as if he was down with the woke contingent early, because there's a very lucrative market within the wokeosphere that he knew that he would have to appease. He's never going to dive in head first like that idiot LeBron James, but he is going to dip his toe into the water. And that's one of the main reasons why I believe he's now getting involved in the NASCAR world and aligning himself with Bubba Wallace, who, as we all know, is a polarizing figure. It's very difficult for two-dimensional thinkers to grasp exactly why Bubba Wallace is doing what he's doing, but I've already broken that situation down very meticulously on my main channel on Patreon. Beyond a shadow of a doubt in my mind, he is a pupil of Odin, aka Saturn, and he was just playing his part to bring together the opposites. He was willing to cast himself as the martyr in a scripted storyline to do so. I'm sure that Michael Jordan is aware of that as well, because he's probably the highest level Mason in the entertainment industry, at least in the sporting aspect of the entertainment industry. That's why he's known as the GOAT. Please grasp that the battle between Michael Jordan and LeBron James is not just about basketball, it's also Masonic / Luciferian. Michael's trying to maintain his stranglehold as being considered the ultimate sportsman within the Masonic world. And LeBron is trying to threaten Michael's captaincy or his kingship per se. But just getting back to the point of this video, Michael knew that he had to issue a statement right after George Floyd's ritualistic removal, so that so-called woke blacks would leave him the hell alone and also be willing to still subscribe to his products, his sneakers, his clothing, etc. As I've already stated, I'm not saying that I don't believe that Michael was insincere when he made the statements that he made about George Floyd. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that he's a very shrewd operator, as all high-level businessmen must be. In the same way that Nike has aligned themselves with Kaepernick, and they are a part of the global agenda to promote Marxism amongst the low-level masses, Michael Jordan is in the know about that as well. He's in the know on that as well. He does play the role of Capricornus / Saturn within the industry, within the sporting world, I should say. Please keep in mind there are very few people who would have been able to take Bubba Wallace away from Richard Petty, who's known as the king in the NASCAR world. So let's see where things go with this Michael Jordan and Bubba Wallace storyline. Will Bubba Wallace change the number on his vehicle? Will we start to see him market himself differently now that he's aligned with Jordan? We'll find out. Or maybe the narrative that he involved himself in during the time of the summer solstice was part of the script that he had to execute to validate his future aligning with Michael Jordan. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Big stuff happening in the sports world. And I don't know if anything could be bigger than this first story that we're going to lead off.
As I always tell you, brothers, pay very close attention to the pictorials that are used in the background of these segments. The producers are almost always in the know and high-level Luciferians. Sometimes the hosts are also in the know, but many times the narrators, they're just sheep. They're deaf, dumb, and blind. Their job is to read the script and to present their own two-dimensional understanding for the audience. They don't want the audience to be able to see behind the curtain. But there's a reason why they opened up with this first picture of Michael Jordan dressed in the all-black for Saturn / Odin.
Here, Renee, but Michael Jordan has teamed up with his good friend Denny Hamlin.
Next photo, he has on the white t-shirt for duality. This photo has to be judged and evaluated in juxtaposition to the previous photo. This is not a standalone photo. They tell you a story through the pictures.
NASCAR star, and they are actually starting their own NASCAR team. And who else did they hire?
Once again, Michael Jordan dressed up in the all black. Of course, there's a little white emblem on his hat, but they're trying to send you a message.
As their driver, and this is something we've been trying to figure out for weeks. Why did Bubba Wallace, why did he leave Richard Petty Motorsports, one of the most successful teams in NASCAR? Well, now we have the answer.
Richard Petty was Bubba Wallace's master. There's not much else that Richard Petty can instruct Bubba Wallace in, so now he's been forwarded to a higher level master in Michael Jordan.
Question. It's because Bubba Wallace is linking up with Michael Jordan, maybe the most famous athlete of all time, and
Bubba Wallace is the most well-known NASCAR driver on the entire circuit, and he's accomplished nothing. That's the power of the Masonic world when you've been chosen to accomplish a certain mission. Also notice, as we can see here, Richard Petty in the black and white.
I feel like, and you tell me how you feel about this, Renee, but I think this is such an important move for NASCAR to have someone like Michael Jordan involved in their sport. And just the
Michael Jordan and his family have a history of being NASCAR fans. There was a very great interview that I saw a couple of months ago that Michael did with, I believe, the main editor associated with Cigar Aficionado. And he was detailing his childhood, how his father would take him and his brothers and sisters to many NASCAR races. Michael also talked about how growing up he was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan because that's what his father was. His father was also a Pittsburgh Pirates fan because his favorite player was Roberto Clemente. I'm also guessing that because they grew up in North Carolina, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Pirates were probably the only team that they were able to see on television, professional team that they were able to follow.
Eyeballs that he's going to bring, the sponsorships, there is so much possibility having Michael Jordan involved in NASCAR. Do you feel, am I on the right track with this?
I mean, all the track.
Michael is there to capitalize. As they always state in the business world, there's a sucker born every minute. Michael understands that he's going to be able to bring to NASCAR a very large woke market of so-called black people who are going to be willing to root for Bubba Wallace because they think that he's some type of hero. And then when you include the conjunction of Bubba Wallace with Michael Jordan, who still has a very high Q rating in so-called black households, it should be a very lucrative partnership for both Michael Jordan and Bubba Wallace, as well as a lucrative partnership for Michael Jordan and NASCAR. So that's how Michael Jordan speaks. That's how he communicates. He doesn't engage in stunts and escapades and antics like LeBron James. He contacts NASCAR and he lets them know how we can both make money in this. Because we have to ride this wave right now while it's hot. The woke wave is hot right now. What you'll notice is that once this stuff dies down, if and when the liberal media is given the go signal or the green light to make it die down, many of these corporations will jump off of the woke bandwagon and leave these idiots by themselves. But for right now, they're really pressing and pushing because they're trying to promote Marxism globally. So this wave could be ridden for, a hot minute. A hot minute meaning 5 to 10 years or however much longer this society is allowed to last. Until they say to themselves, okay, it's time to turn the corner on this. But we'll see. Either way, Michael Jordan stands to make a lot of money with NASCAR.
We talked about it here, all the traction that Bubba Wallace has gotten, and we're like, if he's leaving, he's going somewhere. Like, he already knows something. You don't leave before it's already up. Like, you would usually wait until the season's over and then say you're leaving, but now we see he's collabing and meeting forces with Michael Jordan. What? First of all, the gear, his outfits, like, it's going to be sick because we know the Jordan brand is going to hop all over that. And then just for the culture, NASCAR needs a lot of help in that world. They've been doing different things. They have a committee now, I think, that's targeting making sure that they're inclusive and different things of that nature. So
inclusiveness is code word for how can we diversify our revenue streams. That's how these major corporations are looking at the quote-unquote woke movement. That's why they're engaging in so many stunts. Because they know that, for the most part, so-called black people of the captivity are extremely sensitive and, no disrespect, very ignorant. When I say ignorant, meaning most of our people don't know where they come from, so therefore they have no idea where they're going, which makes it very easy to puppet our people, particularly with emotional diatribes about inclusivity, which seems to be a buzzword for so many woke Negroes, which, as you brothers who frequented my channel for the last 4 years know, I've always translated as so-called white man, please give me a hug. Make me feel better about myself.
Just another step in the direction that Steve Phelps already had them going in NASCAR. So, I mean, I'm curious to see what exactly is going to happen, what it's going to look like, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think you made a great point there, just with the Jordan brand stuff alone.
Yeah.
As we can see here, as above, so below. In this photo, they're trying to communicate that Bubba Wallace is a venerator of the Baphomet. You see left hand on his hip, right hand up in the same pose as the Baphomet. Standing behind him is his master, Richard Petty.
How iconic and how important.
They go from that photo right back to Michael Jordan dressed in the all black. He plays the role of Saturn in the sports world, aka Cronus or Odin. He's the master. There's nobody above Michael Jordan when it comes to the Luciferian aspect in the sporting world. They almost show obeisance to him. When you see Michael Jordan taking photos with Ronaldo or Messi or any of these top soccer players, they all show obeisance to him. And it's not just because of the splendid way in which he played basketball. It's also because of what he represents behind the curtain masonically.
Culturally, the Jordan brand is, and now to bring that to NASCAR and just think about the endless possibilities. I think, a lot of people will say maybe NASCAR's business has been trailing off the last couple years. I think this is going to give them a huge boost, and you can tell that the people are excited. Bubba Wallace is excited to be part of this. Here's what he said about.
They showed this photo before. It's very obvious to me that, as we can see, Bubba's playing the quote-unquote green man here. The outfit, of course, is lime green, and they're just highlighting his left eye. By the way, the quote-unquote Beats by Dre headphones, that's not a B, that's a 6. You understand that? Those are 6s that are on those headphones.
It up with MJ. He said, this is a unique, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I believe is a great fit for me at this point in my career. I'm grateful and humbled that they believe in me, and I'm super pumped to begin this adventure with them. Now, it's not only Bubba that's excited, because Michael Jordan, who I feel like has done so much in the sports world that not much would excite him. Well, this excites Michael because, as he will tell us right here, he was a big NASCAR fan growing up. So here's what Michael said. He said, growing up in North Carolina, my parents would take my brothers, sisters, and me to the races. And I've been a NASCAR fan my whole life.
Go ahead, Mike. I see you.
Opportunity to own my own.
Look at the chick in the background. Oh my goodness, that's Michael Jordan. You see the chick in the background? Let me rewind this back a little bit. See the chick on the right walking down the street? She's mesmerized and flabbergasted. She ready to head up into the hotel room with Mike and his woman.
Opportunity to own my own racing team in partnership with my friend Denny Hamlin, and to have Bubba Wallace driving for us is very exciting for me. In addition to the recent commitment and donations I have made to combat systemic racism, I see this as a chance to educate a new.
Now, this is the second time that they've showed Michael Jordan, or at least a photograph of Michael Jordan in this attire with the black shirt, also showing him as the green man, the god of vegetation, aka Osiris. You understand that? That's why they show certain photos in the background of a segment, to communicate to certain people in the know who are operating on a three-dimensional level. The narrator is only to communicate the two-dimensional understanding of these stories, but the photographs are meant to communicate the three-dimensional understanding.
And open more opportunities for black.
And there they go back to the all black again.
In racing.
Absolutely. And that's a part, I'm glad that end part was on there, because racing just isn't a sport that the black community is in. You know, even you see it with what happened with Bubba Wallace and the noose incident. Whether we don't know who put it in there or not, but
I could tell you who put it in there. Someone who Bubba Wallace, as well as the head of NASCAR, knows. Because this was a narrative, this was a storyline that they were all in on.
If you're a player like Bubba Wallace, now if a situation happens going forward, obviously we hope it doesn't, but it is not.
There goes the hangman noose for Odin, aka Tammuz. That's why that ritual was executed on the summer solstice. I detailed this in a very long series on Bubba Wallace.
Have a black team backing you in the sense of a Michael Jordan. So I could see, just as he said, at this point in my career, where look, Richard Penning, they all supported Bubba Wallace when it happened, but just to have that community behind you, I see it.
What we saw was a gathering of witches. Many of the top NASCAR drivers are also Masons, and they were probably told behind the scenes that this is what we're going to do with Bubba. After a while, we're going to move him along to Michael Jordan, and it's going to make the sport bigger. That's how those guys get appeased. Because number one, Masonically, that aspect of their lives trumps everything else. Whatever their views are on religion or race or government, their Masonic allegiances trump everything else. So when they gathered together to fet Bubba Wallace, they knew what it was for. He was being put through a shaming ritual that was going to exalt him and hopefully socially engineer not only NASCAR, but the United States, and not only the United States, but also the world. Because the point is to reinvigorate the worship and the energies of Horus, aka Heru. That is the great king to these people. And Horus, or Heru, is also known as Satan, the quote-unquote serpent god. That's what Aleister Crowley, that's what he identifies Horus as. Aleister Crowley is the great master witch of the 20th century, aka the quote-unquote great beast. And most of these top-level Masons are also Crowleyites. So that's how it all fits together. That's why they venerate and worship the quote-unquote Baphomet, or the great goat god, known in the ancient world as Khnum. And just bringing it back to Michael Jordan, that's why they call him the GOAT. Because he's the basketball personification of Capricornus, aka Saturn.
Yeah, so do I, and I've always thought about this. When you're a fan of a sport, you want to see the best possible athletes out there, and nobody can ever convince me that only white dudes can drive cars. So there is, right? Like there is a lot of untapped talent out there, and I'm with you. I think that a lot of minorities, a lot of black people probably feel more welcome now because you.
I doubt it. And beyond that, our people have a bevy of problems. I've never heard brothers say, what we need? We need more niggas in NASCAR. I just don't think so-called black people care enough. But the reason why NASCAR was attacked, once again, is because the powers that be want to focus on any organization or association or league per se that appears to be the most stridently separated from what they want, which is a globalization of all the people. They want a mixing of all the people. It's also a mechanism to attack quote-unquote white male hegemony. And that's majorly under attack. Because what the so-called white man represents is the epitome of quote-unquote masculinity or rulership in this current kingdom. So they have to attack him and bring him down, because they're not worried about the so-called black man. They have the so-called black man being moderated by his woman. I mean, there are so many shackles around the neck of the so-called black man. A lot of cats love talking about the white man all day. Well, what about your own woman? She's acting as a proverbial supervisor over you, and she's taking her orders from the same so-called liberal Caucasians that you allege to be against. So there are a bevy of issues here and dynamics that have to be assessed. But just getting back to the point, niggas don't give a shit about no damn NASCAR. Having more so-called black male race car drivers is not going to change shit. Not for our people as a whole.
Black ownership in the sport, that's important. Representation is important, and you've got to figure this out.
Because look at the NFL. I mean, the NFL, let's look at the NFL, for example. They're still trying to work on that black ownership, and
the NFL ain't trying to work on shit. But that's the main conversation that needs to be had. Everyone's talking about black coaches and black quarterbacks. There needs to be a push for black owners. There are multiple so-called black billionaires in the United States. That's where the push should be if people are actually concerned about quote-unquote inclusiveness in the NFL. The NBA only has one so-called black owner, but nobody talks about it because allegedly the NBA is quote-unquote progressive. Allegedly.
For NASCAR, they're...
But once again, I promise you that you'll see a female head coach in the NBA before the majority of head coaches in the NBA are black men. You will see a female coach. You'll see Becky Hammon coaching a team in the NBA before the majority of the head coaches in the NBA are black, so-called black.
same boat as the NFL as we understand that they're conservative. So to have Michael Jordan now as an owner, that's a big deal for NASCAR. And
Right, well, Michael Jordan's conservative too. Most of these guys on television who are affluent are quote-unquote conservative, meaning they vote Republican. Because they're business-minded. They're not necessarily poverty-minded. What the Democratic Party does is they poverty-monger. They act as if they're concerned about so-called poor people, but they're really not. Their normal credo is we're going to find a way to give you some money. Nobody gives you money. They have to take from people who are actually working to give to those who either can't or won't work, as opposed to empowering the people through knowledge and information. As I've stated in other videos, there should be a dedicated finance course in every high school, starting from junior high school into high school, so that by the time people graduate, they understand how to read the stock market. They understand terms like futures and derivatives, stocks, bonds. What are those things? What do they mean? That's the reason why people leave high school and leave college and they can't make any money, because they don't understand the system. But so-called Democrats are not concerned about instructing people in that way, because it's like the old saying goes, as long as I owe you, you'll never be broke. The Democratic Party mentality is, as long as there's poverty and poor people, there's always going to be a group that we can make false promises to. And remember, the vote of an idiot who has no intention on empowering themselves or working to get themselves in a better situation counts the exact same as a person who has dedicated their whole life to improving themselves and their environment. And that's what the Democratic Party preys on. That's why they want to bring in so many quote-unquote illegal immigrants. That's why they want to lower the voting age. What are you saying about your beliefs and your agendas as a party when you're concerned about lowering the voting age to 15 and 16 years old, like Nancy Pelosi said? What they're basically saying is that you have to be a child or an idiot to agree with many of our agendas, or degenerate. Because by the time you get to be 35 and 40 years old and you grasp what life is really about, you would never vote for a so-called Democrat. That's if you vote at all. I don't vote at all. But if I did vote, never in life would I ever vote for a fucking Democrat. Ever.
To see that trickle to other leagues.
Yeah, and look, the reality is there are not a lot of black drivers in NASCAR. We spoke with a guy named Jesse Iwuji.
As we can see here, they're highlighting the car with the number 13 on it for the Great Serpent.
Not in the top level of NASCAR yet, but he's in the Infinity Series, which is right below. And this guy is coming on fast. He is a heck of a race car driver. And we actually talked to him about Michael being an owner. And you can see it on his face and hear it in his words, just how excited Jesse is.
Of course, they show him bowing down the knee to Baal. I'm not saying that he's a Baal worshiper. I'm just stating that that is what they're trying to communicate through this photo. He may be praying to what he believes is the Most High. But the ritual that they're promoting or pushing through Kaepernick is what the scriptures refer to as bowing the knee to Baal.
This is a big shift. I think this is really just the beginning of like a new era in NASCAR where now we're really starting to see just a lot of different demographics coming in. Even just during, during this whole COVID year, I think we've seen a lot of different fans come into this space, especially with everything going on with, all the different.
Or then again, you never know. This guy could be an asset himself. Many times they introduce these characters in a relatively quote unquote innocent way, and then you find out that there's someone different. As I've already stated, the first time that I saw Bubba Wallace was on the show Speak for Yourself back when Jason Whitlock was there. And he was sitting on the panel and speaking about how he's the only current NASCAR driver of prominence who happens to be so-called black, and he wants to represent for so-called black people, this and that. And then you come to find out what he actually is, which is a Luciferian plant and an agent for quote unquote change. So this person could be the same thing. Who knows? We'll find out down the line.
Social injustice, things that you can see in the news that's happening. A lot of people were looking at Bubba Wallace as, since he's in the Cup Series, as someone to potentially, look up to, be like, hey, what are you going to do? What kind of stance are you going to take? And I think Jordan, with his influence and his global brand, he'll be able to attract different sponsors that we've maybe never had in the sport. He'll be able to attract different business to business type deals and sponsorships that we haven't seen before. So having him here, I think, is great for the sport. I think it's great for racing in general around the world.
I really think, Renee, we're probably going to look back years, a year, 5, 10 years down the road, and this is going to be a moment where there was a monumental shift in NASCAR's world, and I think that's a great thing.
That's very interesting. This narrator here, he basically gave the same time frame that I gave. I did not watch this entire segment before I did this video. He also said 5 to 10 years. I think that that's how long this Marxist wave is going to last until something else occurs. But Michael Jordan is very shrewd in his investing. He knows that right now this is the wave to ride if you want to make some quick high-level cash, some quick high-level currency, I should say. So he has to align himself with Bubba Wallace, someone who already has a name. But anyway, peace.